Okay, we are on Genesis chapter 37. This will be part 3. And you're asking, well, why are we taking so much time? Well, because there's so much good information here Christologically in Genesis chapter 37 with the life of Joseph. And Christologically, everything in the Old Testament is fulfilled by Christ. Everything in the Old Testament points to Christ. Everything in the Old Testament is what's called type or shadow of the ultimate fulfillment in the person and works of Jesus Christ. So as that would relate, if you want to use the word allegorically, I prefer the term Christologically, but to the life of Joseph, Jesus is the better Joseph. So we've talked about all that stuff here in chapter 37, and now we are finishing chapter 37, I believe, with the coming of the Ishmaelites. The Ishmaelites are on the way, like the redcoats, right? There's no Paul Revere to help poor Joseph here, right? All right, so now remember earlier in the chapter, the firstborn of Jacob, Reuben, is crafted this little ruse against his brothers that he will circle back to Joseph later, who they've already stripped of his coat of many colors, if you will, and thrown him into a pit. Reuben wants to circle back later and rescue the boy and deliver him back to his father. But he makes the critical error of trusting his brothers, who've just stripped his youngest brother and thrown him into a pit. And he's trusting these scoundrels. He's like, I'll be back in a few minutes. And that was a fatal error. Why? Because here we are in verse 25. Then they sat down to eat. All right, now imagine the hardness of heart, if you will. These guys are talking about killing their youngest brother, their father's son, and now they're just going to sit down and have a meal, like, they're going to break out the microwave and pop the popcorn and, Okay, so they're sitting down to eat, and looking up, they saw a caravan of Ishmaelites coming from Gilead with their camels bearing gum, balm, and myrrh on their way to carry it down to Egypt. So they're traders, right? Not traders as in betrayers, but we'll find out that later on too. But they are trading goods. They're trying to they're merchants, if you will.
Trade everything.
Verse 26, then Judah said to his brothers, "Oh, Judah, what profit is it if we kill our brother and conceal his blood? Come, let us sell him to the Ishmaelites." So we're just trading one horrific sin for another horrific sin. We're going to sell our own flesh and blood into slavery and make money off of it. And let not our hand be upon him, for he is our brother, our own flesh. Well, how nice of you, Judah. Slavery is a much better alternative, right? Wrong. And his brothers listened to him, of course, because they're also geniuses, right? Then Midianite traders passed by. Midianites and the Ishmaelites are the same group.
Oh, okay.
And just synonym. And they drew Joseph up and lifted him out of the pit and sold him to the Ishmaelites for 20 shekels of silver, and they took Joseph to Egypt. Now remember last week, Christologically, we talked about how this is a type of Christ, which is going to be fulfilled in the future. Jesus, of course, is sold by his brethren for 30 shekels of silver. And I brought up one of the early church fathers, was it St. Ambrose or John Chrysostom? I think it was Chrysostom. Said that Joseph is but a servant of Christ, and so therefore is sold for a lesser amount. But the master is sold at a higher price. And so our Lord fetched 30 shekels of silver. Okay. But yes.
You're talking about they sold him to these people.
Yes.
But then why does it say down in 29, when Reuben returned to the pit, he saw that Joseph was not in the pit?
Yeah, because they fetched him up out of the pit and said, "Here you go, take him." And they got 20
But Reuben wasn't there.
Yeah, Reuben, remember I said Reuben made the fatal error of taking off. Yeah, he trusted them.
I needed my story.
Yes,
straight.
You're good. And so Christ is, anyways, all right. So when Reuben returned to the pit and saw that Joseph was not in the pit, and oh yeah, that's what I was going to say. So remember, Christ descending into the pit. In the Old Testament, the pit is often referred to as Sheol, or going down to the depths, or going down to the place of the dead, right? And so when Christ is crucified, and they take his body from the cross and they lay him in the tomb, which is the earth, which is going down to Sheol. And in the creeds we say he descended into hell, right? He descended into both of the sides, if you will, or compartments of what was called Abraham's bosom by many. One side being what you and I would call hell, and the other side being what you and I would call paradise, right? And Jesus tells the parable of rich man and Lazarus. Rich man dies without faith. He goes into hell, which is Gehenna in Hebrew. And there he can see Abraham and Lazarus across a void, and he begs Abraham to send Lazarus over to dip water on his tongue. He said, nope, we can't come over to you, and you cannot come to us. Then he says, well, send Lazarus back to my brothers, so that they will not come to this place of torment, as Jesus tells in the parable, right? And of course, so basically, the rich man is on the unrighteous compartment, the wicked side, and there's a void, and Abraham and Lazarus are on the righteous compartment, or what Jesus says to the thief on the cross, today you will be with me in paradise. In the Greek it's paradiso, right? So they're in the righteous compartment. So when Jesus' body is laid in the ground, he descended into hell. He went to both the unrighteous, as St. Peter says, he preached to the souls held captive, even the ones before the flood, right? I think that's 1st or 2nd Peter, 1 Peter chapter 3, something like that. And then he also preached the victory over sin, death, and the devil to the righteous compartment, to the saints, to Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, etc., right? Moses, everybody, right? And so in that way, then the pit, Sheol, Abraham's bosom, Jesus' body, he descends into hell, right? So again, Jesus fulfills being cast into the pit, right? And he fulfills the 20 shekels, thus becoming 30 shekels, right? So now Reuben comes back, verse 29, and he saw that Joseph was not in the pit, and he tore his clothes. And he returned to his brothers and said, the boy is gone, and where shall I go? Daddy's going to find out, and things are not going to go well. So now they hatched the final part of the plan here. Then they took Joseph's robe and slaughtered a goat and dipped the robe in the blood. And they sent the robe of many colors and brought it to their father and said, talk about psychologically, emotionally torturing their own father. It just gets worse and worse and worse, right? This we have found. Oh, we just happened upon it, right? Liars. Please identify whether this is your son's robe or not. Rhetorical question. All right. And he identified it and said, it is my son's robe. A fierce animal has devoured him. Joseph is without doubt torn to pieces. So their little ruse has seemingly worked.
They didn't have DNA back then.
No. But they're going to get, as with all major sins like this, everything comes to light eventually. They're going to get found out. Then Jacob tore his garments, as you would do, as a sign of extreme mourning, and put sackcloth on his loins and mourned for his son many days. All his sons and all his daughters rose up to comfort him, but he refused to be comforted and said, no, I shall go down to Sheol to my son mourning. So he did not believe that
his son was dead.
No, he did. What I'm trying to say is Jacob believes in that the spirit or soul lives on after. So he believes he will go down to the place where his son, in other words, like Jesus tells the parable of the rich man and Lazarus, Lazarus cannot be sent to the rich man's brothers. One cannot go to the other. However, Jacob can go down to Sheol. He can go down to where his son is, right? Mourning, right? And remember, this is his favorite son from his favorite wife, right? I know that's hard for us to understand in our American context, but he has 4 wives and 12 sons. And I've been told that the more children you have, many people often will have a favorite. Mom will have a favorite and dad will have a favorite. And that is, don't ask that question. That's not nice.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Never put somebody on the spot on that.
Depends on what time you're talking.
That's yeah. Kenny's right.
Yeah, I mean, I'm very fortunate. I look at all my kids equally. Yeah, they look at me and they say, "You do?" And I'm like, "Well, yeah, I do."
You love them all.
Yeah. All right. However, favoritism is very common. As a matter of fact, it's probably more common than most people would want to admit. All right. Meanwhile, the Midianites sold him in Egypt to Potiphar. Of course, you maybe recognize that name. The officer of Pharaoh, the captain of the guard. Right. So the Pharaoh's personal bodyguard, Potiphar, is the captain. So he's now a slave. But he's in seemingly, if you're going to be a slave in a rich man's house. Well, and so maybe God will deliver him by that route. Well, we're going to find that one betrayal often leads to another betrayal. Okay, so let's go to our handout here. All right, so the Ishmaelites are coming. I put on the handout. Now, the Ishmaelites are the offspring of Abraham and Hagar. All right, now remember, this in our earlier study in Genesis, that, I guess I'll use, can you see the blue? Remember, you got Father Abraham that starts in Genesis chapter 12, right? And Abraham, whose initial name was what? Abram? But then God changes him to Abraham, father of many nations. He is married to, who's his legal wife? You remember? Sarah. That's her ultimate name. However, her first name before she was given was Sarai, right? And Sarah, they're both getting very old, and she has yet to conceive. And maybe they're blaming one another, like this is your problem, and this is, as that's actually common down through the age, and they didn't, until modern science, it was hard to know who had the fertility issues. It was often, as ladies know, the woman is blamed, but it's quite common for the male to be infertile as well, right? So so who knows, right? But then but remember Yahweh, right? Yahweh, we'll put Yahweh over them. Wait, YHWH. Yahweh is over them all. Yahweh comes to Abraham and to Sarah, or Sarai, and he says, you're going to have a child. And of course, remember now, outside of the American context, oftentimes couples will get older, and then they take care of one another. Couples without children, they get older, they take care of one another, and then when one of them dies, you have the government to fall back on. You have Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, maybe public housing. You can get Meals on Wheels. You can have the community take care of the remaining widow or widower, right? In the ancient world, there's none of that. If you don't have kids,
you're done.
Well, good luck if you live to your 70s, 80s, and 90s. Good luck, right? So they're childless, and of course, ultimately there would be a son come. But before then, Sarah gets impatient, as we are often wont to do as human beings, and she takes her handmaiden, who is Hagar, very good, and she gives Hagar to Abraham and says, well, at least I can have a child through Hagar. Because now, is that a sign of faith on her part when she's already been promised by Yahweh that she will get a child? No. Whenever human beings meddle, we think we're doing the right things, and God has promised certain things, and we think, well, apparently God has forgot, or he's not fast enough for me, or whatever excuse we make up. We meddle, right? And then we create additional problems for ourselves. How many can say amen to that? All right. Yeah. All right. So, in doing this, her little ruse works. However, there's going to be additional problems from that. And that the firstborn child of Abraham is Ishmael. Right? Now later, the promise does happen in the Lord's time, not in Sarah's time or Abraham's time, because the whole time they're like, you promised me, this isn't happening, blah, blah, blah. And finally it's, well, this time next year, you will be with child, right? And of course, the word of the Lord is true. It comes to pass. And she has a son who is who? Isaac. Very good. Who's the child of promise. Right? And Ishmael is not going to be the child of the promise. And if you want to read about this, you can read about this in the book of Hebrews in the New Testament. Right? Hebrews 11, 12, right around there, I think. He's the child of what's called Sinai in terms of Christological fulfillment, right? He is the child from the law, that is from human interference, right? Human deeds, not what God intended, right? So therefore, the law, because of what? The law comes because of sin. Right? Not that the law is sinful, the law is good, but sin is evil. But because men sin, right, the law comes so that sin may be revealed as utterly sinful against God's will.
So
right?
why is Ishmael, because of what his mother did? Why is he?
Yeah, it started with Sarah. Yeah. Sarah was the Lotzi, the central point of it all. She got impatient. She got greedy. And she didn't wait for the promise. She tried to circumvent God's will, right?
So because of that, Ishmael is the damaged goods.
Well, he's the fruit of her hatched plan.
Okay.
However, later, here's the Ishmaelites, right? And they're taking a child of Sarah, Isaac, Jacob, and they're taking him down to Egypt and putting him in slavery.
Okay.
One of the many, and later there's going to be more and more and more fallout from this.
Okay.
It just doesn't. Matter of fact, guess what? 2026, there's still fallout from this one decision. And we're going to get to that here. We're 3,000 plus years later, and we're still dealing with the tidal wave of rebellion from this one episode.
Well, there was Ishmael never ever would have held the Zerah. That was coming from
the seed, seed, the offspring, which would be Christ. Because the Zerah, the seed from Genesis chapter 3, comes through the lineage of Abraham, Sarah, Isaac, to Jacob, to Judah, all the way down the line to the Lion and tribe of Judah, which is none other than Jesus of Nazareth through Mary and her human flesh, right? All right, so here Ishmael is still born, and for the sake of Abraham, right? For Abraham, because he's still the firstborn son, although not the son of the promise, the son of the consequences of sin and evil. And so in this way, he is like the law, the consequences, right? He's not the child of the promise, which you could say the child of the promise The zerah, the seed, the offspring, equals the gospel, the good news. Because when you're an old couple without a child, right, you need some good news. So here's the promise, here's the good news, and not only are you going to get a son, Isaac, but this son is carrying the zerah, the seed, the one promised to Eve all the way back in Genesis chapter 3, right? So Ishmael then is for the sake of Abraham, as I was said earlier, would be blessed. Now this blessing would be temporal. That is of the earth, in the here and the now, right? He is not carrying the zerah. The zerah is eternal. Jesus is eternal. But for the sake of Abraham, he does bless Ishmael. All right, we're going to keep moving. We're going to find out how he blesses. Well, so the promise, point number 2 here, of a great nation and 12 princes to Ishmael is given in Genesis chapter 17. We did that several months ago, maybe even a year ago. It's been a while since we've been in Genesis 17, right? But so the temporal blessing is that, like Jacob, who's going to have 12 sons, Ishmael is going to have 12 sons.
No,
right?
I didn't even catch that.
Yes, 12 and 12.
Yeah.
And those 12 will be earthly princes. They will not, however, have the eternal blessing of carrying Messiah, right? Hagar and Ishmael are ultimately cast out. About chapters 17, 18, 19, 20, right around in there, right? If you remember that. Because here comes the son of the promise, and then she looks over at Sarah. Sarah looks over at Ishmael and Hagar and says, they gotta go, right? See ya, all right? The Lord.
She had that much control.
Do you have control in your household? You have some control, don't you?
I have some, but I don't have that much. I mean, I can't just
Well, I think for the sake of peace in the household.
probably.
Right. So they sent him off with some stuff, and then the Lord promised to take care of him. And as you can see, he's going to make them into a great nation with
Okay.
12 princes. So it's not like Ishmael was abandoned to death and darkness and a cruel life that was God was going to take care of it all, right? So yes, she did have some control. She's the matriarch, right? Remember, by the time you get to, I mean, there's dozens of people in the household. By the time you get to Jacob going down into Egypt, as we're going to find out in later chapters here, because of the famine, there's over 70 people in the household. So yes, I think even in Abraham and Sarah's household, which was probably several dozen as well, she did exert quite a bit of control of the situation, right? All right. So, well, she talked her husband into sleeping with a handmaid too. So I don't know. Maybe he did it out of pure love for his wife. I don't know. Anyway. All right.
A lot of workarounds there.
So from these 12 princes are going to come all the future tribes of the Arabs. Remember earlier I talked about the consequences keep rolling here in the year of our Lord 2026. Here you are literally 33 centuries later, give or take, probably 34, 35 centuries later, and the Arabs and the Jews are still at it. They're not exactly, they are related, distant relations, but they are like the Hatfields and the McCoys. You know, that's why I often laugh, like when all these presidents come along, because I've been around long enough to see a few presidents, as has all of you, and they all want to do the whole peace in the Middle East things. You know, I can remember the first time I remember it, Jimmy Carter administration, you know, where you had Anwar Sadat on the Rose Garden or the South Lawn, and they signed, and I forget, Menachem Begin or something like that. Bibi wasn't around then, but I think Begin was the prime minister of Israel, and they signed the peace treaty and it was historic, and everybody thought it was a new day, and then they went back to fighting, and then Bill Clinton comes along, and they thought it was a new day, and then they go back to fighting, and now you got the Abraham Accords, and guess what? They're still fighting, and this is a blood feud. Any American president, sorry, President Trump, but any American president who thinks they're going to solve this blood feud, good luck.
The trial and error is still always there.
Yeah, that we can try, but this is ancient blood feud, and I mean this is like we don't even comprehend the level of hatred.
So Iran is like from
the Iran would be a different.
Ishmaelites?
Well, the Iranians would be of a different ethnic group, but ultimately the Arabs would become Muslims, and then through Islam, Iran, the Persians, which are a different ethnic group, they would ultimately join in the religion of the Arabs, although they have a different theological bent than the Saudi Arabians do.
So what's going on there then is something different? The uprising in Iran?
Well, that I better not comment on
Okay.
when we get done taping, I'll give you my 2 cents on that.
Are they blood? Are they connected blood-wise or just religion-wise?
As whole people groups, just religion-wise.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, there might be some. It's a long story.
Well, yeah,
There might be some family groups that are because
It'd be like Jews.
Muhammad had several generals, no, I don't think they're related so much by blood.
Okay.
They're related more by geopolitics and religion.
Not saying
to
there
a
is
certain
some
degree.
could be, but
Yeah.
not that don't matter.
Okay, so here you have the future tribes of the Arabs, from Yemen to Saudi Arabia, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Here you have a blood feud now between half-brothers and cousins, right? Though often rivals, Jews and Ishmaelites, and you can read about this in Psalm 83, there are sometimes partnerships, as in the marriage of Esau, who's the son of who? Isaac,
Yeah.
to a daughter of Ishmael, which would be like a half-cousin.
Okay.
Right? So you do see partnerships, but mostly it's just blood feud, right? The Ishmaelites, thus the Arabs today, still have a significant branch in Abraham's tree, if you will, family tree, right? So now theologically, religiously, you have this entire concept of what I'm calling the people of the book, and that's not my term. That's a term others have used. The book being this, right? So, back to the board here. There is a severe disagreement theologically between 3 major religions. And I have them written down there. Go ahead and list them off.
Jews, Arabs,
Right.
Muslims, and Gentiles.
So you have Jews, or the religion being specifically Judaism, right? Or what's called rabbinical Judaism. Then you have the Arabs, and their religion is Islam or Muslims. Right, which this comes much later, 7th century after the ascension of Christ. And then you also have Christianity, or the church. And these are Gentiles, the nations. Oh wait, I should probably do this. Let's go Gentiles. But specifically Gentiles who are of Christ. Right? Okay, the people of the book, and this is a broad term, in other words, the people who have some connection theologically, culturally, to the 39 books of the Old Testament. So the book being Biblos in Greek, that's where you get the word Bible, equals the 39 of the Old Testament, right? So, does Judaism draw from the 39 books of the Old Testament? Absolutely. Does Islam have a high view of the 39 books of the Old Testament? Yes, but they have a different view on it. They believe that the Jews have twisted the meaning. So one simple example would be, who's the child of the promise from the Muslim?
Ishmael.
It's Ishmael. Ishmael is the child of the promise. And Jacob has... there's so many generations here. No, Isaac, I got to go back one generation.
Yeah.
Isaac has stolen the promise from Ishmael.
Yeah.
See how this blood feud? So even culturally, blood-wise, and religiously, in every way, that's why you have 34 centuries of blood feud.
Because he was firstborn, is that what they think?
Yes,
He was born first.
that the Jews have told lies about the central teachings of the Old Testament, and they've twisted the text, right? So if I am of Ishmael, who is of Abraham, or I am, we'll put a star here, or I am of Isaac, who is of, I may be half brothers, and I may have the same daddy, different mom. However, I'm going to claim the status of the child of promise, therefore the people of promise, right? So they have the Old Testament in common, but they war over who's the central focus. Is it supposed to be Ishmael, or is it supposed to be Isaac?
Well, they
right?
war over that because they're not paying any attention to the true Zerah. Christ
Well,
coming through.
and here, very good. That's where the Gentiles come in. The Zerah, right, who's the son we're going to focus on. Zerah in Hebrew is the seed, or in English, the offspring. And who is the offspring? S-P-R, come on, David, spell. The offspring of Abraham. Well, yes, Isaac is an offspring of Abraham. Yes, Ishmael is an offspring. But who is the offspring?
Christ.
Christ. Right. In the fullness of time, God sent forth his son, born of a virgin, born under the law, to redeem those who were under the law. Moses, Sinai, right? All right, so the promise, so here we have law and gospel again. Now remember, law is threat and punishment, or even conditions. If you do this, then I'll do that. That's all law, right? And while the gospel is nothing